All righty. Welcome back, everyone. I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker, Jorge, a dear friend who we actually visited with in Mexico City, Jorge and Sylvie, and had a great vegan dinner and talked a lot about their project and vision for edible living forests, which are super exciting. Now, I know, Jorge, your talk today is a bit broader. It's about sustainable food generally, and I'm sure you'll tell us about your free food for future projects. So we're very, very excited. Everyone, please give a warm welcome and a big warm hug to Jorge and Sylvie. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jamin, and very nice to see new faces and friends already. I hope that the new faces will become also friends. And I love the setting because the essence of what I've heard from the last block of conversation was very inspiring to continue on that with this talk, because I also feel that we need a new story created by so many voices. And this platform that you're presenting to all of us, this idea of connecting the YouTube, Zoom, and then post it and share it around on Facebook, this is perfect to get a hold of all these voices scattered all around the world. And I also believe Stephanie was talking about a broader sense of intelligence, like a source, not a human source monopoly, let's call it like that, but like all the beings, including Earth, the planet as such, with all of us on board. So I'm taking that into consideration for what we're going to present now. This morning, we are changing the times, right? Like anyone has a full answer of how the new world or the new story is going to exactly look like. We have ideas, we have maybe dreams, complementary dreams, and then we find people that think like us or completely different from us. And it is amazing, this vast possibility of what is about to happen. And then there's these theories that talk about a future emerging, right? Like the future is already there and it's calling for us to materialize it and making it come to catch up to the present somehow in a non-linear way. So I've been also hearing a lot of the conversations transmitted during the block parties and before the block parties existed. I don't know if the doggies are very loud right now. They're very playful. We're right now house pet sitting. So this is our second day in this setting. Like, who would say that you can leave other person alive and take care of their pets and be trusted with their houses, you know, and get to know other parts of the world or even in your own hometown, no? Like to live in a place where you bought maybe trousers or t-shirts, because this used to be an old department store. And then when I was still in my office life, I created with a few friends a big concert here before it got transformed into lofts. And that's where we're living temporarily for this weekend, right? Yeah. But all through this time, there has been a park, the Park of Mexico, Mexico Park, Parque Mexico, with the same trees probably since I'm alive. And it's amazing to see from the rooftop all this canopy of all different varieties and different species of trees. And I love it because it can be such a sunny day, and if you're walking on the streets, you feel the heat, And as soon as you come under the canopy, it is like 10 Celsius fresher, you know? Like it holds so much humidity, and it's so beautiful to see all these trunks of different sizes, different textures, and all these millions of leaves above us. So this is part of the vision that we are trying to create into a new story, because we believe that these spaces can be thriving community food forests where people can contribute with their actual work to see very nutritious food growing from seed all the way to their plates. And especially we're focusing on perennials, such as the trees that have been here for decades. But something happened along the way that all these trees were selected not to bear any fruit. And we're not exactly sure why, because even in my father's generation, people used to have food growing in their backyards or in their front lawns. And if they didn't have any access to owning this property, they had the common spaces, such as the parks or the streets, right? But nowadays, you can hardly find any fruit growing in the major cities like the megalopolis. Of course, there are so many smaller cities that still have this available. But for example, in Mexico, we notice a big potential of having hyper-local food. But it goes beyond the food. I like to link it to what we experienced in one opportunity that, by the way, I've never imagined this happening so fast. Having the arguments of someone as Dr. Silas Rao in the same space with Mr. Alan Savory, which are completely different mindsets. And from being part of that conversation, I realized that the conversation was not in the same topic, let's call it like that. Like they were not talking in a channel that they could understand each other. And that's very important to have a co-creation, right? Like to share the same space. Like I felt like there were two conversations going on at the same time, both trying to defend their own. And Jamin was doing a great job trying to open the space of conversation and co-creation, but it's really hard. And I experience that right now because I know that there is a big expectation about technology-based solutions such as the NEAR project. And here we are, Sylvia and I, partners in this another crazy idea, because if you tell people, hey, let's just like put floating mirrors by the millions in the ocean, they will say, okay, roll the joint, right? Like it's something very out of the box and no one can really grasp it immediately as, yeah, okay, that sounds doable. I understand it fully right away. Like you need to be very on the track of that mindset already to okay, yeah, how can I join? And I have this knowledge, and maybe we feel the same thing from a natural solution, such as community food forests. The difference that I see, and I don't want to make it a competition, is that what we're trying to present is not a agriculture sustainable food production only. It includes that. But what we're presenting is system co-creation, and we can pretend that we can transform or make the current system go through a metamorphosis and completely come out completely different from what the system is right now. Or just start a new system and leave the older one obsolete, no? Like we have heard Buckminster Fuller talk about, right? So we have a series of slides we would like to project, but before that, I'm honoring Melissa, because we met Melissa, and it was funny because Melissa is the art part of the duo of Jamin and Melissa, right? Like they complement each other, but such as the cow symbol, like Melissa has a very structured part and Jamin has a very artist part. So I know that both of them love art and they push it forward as the beautiful graffiti invitation of the first block party that now continue on as the logo, let's call it, no, of the block parties. So I would like, maybe this is very weird, but I would like to bring some music into the beginning, of, more than just like put a bunch of slides and go through them really quickly, like trying to open the space for the elements. And maybe if you allow me to have the opportunity of singing in Spanish, that is my mother tongue, my native tongue. Is really short, and if you feel like this is something that we want to participate, maybe we can join Melissa in thumbs up. Yes? Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So again, this is not my guitar. Like we're sitting in somebody else's couch, in somebody else's loft.
Petting someone else's dogs.
Exactly. I'm very glad to hear Sylvie's voice because I believe that her voice might represent the divine feminine that needs a space from the patriarchal voice to shut up a little and to allow this voice to come out. And sometimes we sing together and I feel this balance of this one energy, but sometimes appreciated as different. So maybe I should switch sides with you so you don't have the guitar on the face. That's better. Very nice. Okay. So this is a song, very quickly, I don't want to over-explain art. It's not my art. I'm just like repeating a mantra, let's call it like that. And it's about the elements, no? Like the water, the air, the earth, the soil, the fire. Okay?
And it's in connection to your own body, like how we are connected to the elements.
Exactly. So earth is your body, water is your blood, air is your breath, and fire is your soul, let's call it like that, spirit, or that thing that even if they chop up your body, they can't understand what makes the body works, right? So it's I'm so glad it's tuned. All right, I'm gonna sit here with my leg up. I think that's easier. Can you adjust the Tierra mi cuerpo, agua mi sangre, aire mi aliento, mi fuego mi espíritu. Tierra mi cuerpo, agua mi sangre, aire mi aliento. aliento y fuego mi espíritu. Tierra mi cuerpo, agua mi sangre, aire mi aliento y fuego mi espíritu. Tierra mi cuerpo, agua mi sangre, aire mi aliento y fuego mi espíritu. Tierra mi cuerpo, agua mi sangre, aire mi aliento y fuego mi espíritu.
Beautiful, Jorge. Thank you. You've just transformed the whole space.
Thank you, Jamin. The transformation is being created by me, you, no, right? Like this song talks about, if we're talking about healing of the earth, it's not the healing of the earth because we are earth, right? Like, and even if we see as separate, we are not as one. We are one, right? So when I hear the healing, I immediately jump into asking myself, are we sick? Or are we insane? Or what are we referring to with healing, right? So the way that I explain it to myself maybe is to say that we are in a lesson to apprehend so we can graduate. Like that for me makes more sense because I don't feel sick and I don't feel insane. Maybe I am, but I don't feel it. Like I don't come from that space. So for me, it's difficult to understand what do we mean by healing the earth, or when people are facing a cancer lesson, they are not cancer, right? And some people identify humans as the cancer of earth, but I don't identify with that either. So the idea of this presentation is to try to put together into visuals how the new world or the new story, the new narrative can include as awareness-based collective action for this metamorphosis or transformation of whatever we are graduating from. So I want to ask Jamin, if I press share, I will be able to share?
Yeah, exactly. And you'll see on your screen different options like desktop or a specific application. If you do desktop, from there you can share anything else you want. You'll just be seeing your desktop.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Jamin.
You're welcome.
So I can do that now. So this is a two-person, two-year journey. Like I have lived so many lives in my 42 years, and Sylvie also. And nobody can explain when we were in the middle of the Amazon what was a PhD from Germany and a bachelor in communication from Mexico City doing in the middle of the Amazon, planting fruit trees in a food forest. And I can't explain it either, like so easily. But this is kind of like the naiveness of our process. You can see it in this attempt of a logo that came out from an idea while coming back of participating in the Fridays for Future experiences at the end of last year in Mexico City, where we were hearing so many people saying exactly what they don't want and not a word of what they want, right? Like we are part of that anger of having trusted the elders to point out to the right direction and somehow delegated that. And now we're realizing that they really didn't fulfill the promise of taking care of us, call them like maybe governments or our parents or grandparents. So they don't want anything, like the new generations don't want to continue those mistakes, but they're not sure what to continue. So we said, okay, if we could say what we want, how can we make it sound familiar and easy to understand without going into system change and let's acupressure the economy point and the education acupressure point and the farming to heal the land acupressure point. Like this sounds very technical, and so we thought about the free food for future. Okay, so this is a lot of text. You don't need to read it. It's just like to get an idea of what we're talking about. Just focus on the numbers. The possibilities to eat only from plants are around 400,000 different plants. So out of that potential, we're eating half of our calories and proteins from only 3 of those. So I know that this is a lot of text, and we will be glad to send out this if you want to read it. It's just a long quote, and right now we want to focus only on the numbers. We believe that this is very important because we have planet A, and we're not looking at it. Our mindset is we don't have a planet B, right? Like we hear that all the time. We see that in banners, in Facebook. Like the planet A is abundant, is vast. Even if it's burning, which we believe that we need to address that also, there's so much abundance right now. So much. Even when we're thinking about the house is burning, there's still so much abundance. So moving on. As you can see, even the UN biodiversity agrees to these kind of same figures, right? Only 9 of the 6,000 plants cultivated for food account for 66% of the total crop production. So we have been not taking this abundance with open eyes for our thriving potential, thriving possibilities. The market has been coming in, selecting what we eat. We don't even realize that we don't have freedom anymore to select what we want to eat. Like it's all what it is available in the supermarkets. Even though it's a winter time and you can buy pineapples and watermelons in the middle of a snowstorm, right? Like we think that we're free to go and get those pineapples, but you're missing out all the varieties that can be grown in your snow weather before it snows, obviously. And talking a little bit, like not trying to cover the sun with only the hand, we know that the challenge is very big because we have all this machinery working for monopoly purposes, for constraining life, for taking away freedom, and the most clear way to present this in this topic is what we're doing with seeds. We can see that the seeds are being monopolized and patented. So it's not a question if bioengineering is good or bad. By the way, Sylvie is a PhD in bioengineering. So it's not a question about that, it's what we're doing with that. We're patenting life. We're creating monopolies. That is the real underlying issue here. So that applied to seeds replicates in so many other arenas, right? So what we created is this beautiful permaculture looking flower that talks about the freedom that we're talking about. So we divided it into clusters. So we have the cluster about the financial and monopoly aspect. How can we free that? Then we have deforestation, monocultures, land grabbing, methods that go against biodiversity, patented seeds and transgenics, artificial flavors and colors and flavor enhancers, synthetic products, toxic pesticides and fumigations, petrol fuel fertilizers, fossil fuels for transport and storage, plastic packaging. Even in the vegan aspect, like a lot of vegans, we don't know this, that we are using the animal remains, their blood, their bones, their manure, the bycatch of fish, their slaughterhouse waste, and it sometimes comes with the hormones and antibiotics when it's not an organic meat production facility. And still we eat from those plants as vegans. So I know that we're doing enough, but we can do much more. So here it is, free of all of this. And of course, from any animal exploitation and suffering, in domesticated, bred for consumption, wild, and even the human animal. So how does this connect to the space where we first learned about Jamin and his project of Radish? Well, we met in the Climate Healers group that runs a project called Vegan World 2026. And this is a visual to explain what we're going through. So this has been giving us the connection of our 2-year journey to what Jamin and the Radish team are doing. Like we need to go from the way that things were created by men and women and people that we have been living on this earth for so many thousand years to what's next. So here we can see that veganism is just 1/2 of a bullet point. Like out of everything that you can read here, veganism, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but it's on the number 1 point. Everything else, I believe that we can connect to so many people that are not vegan yet. So many people that are collaborating in their own silos to get into this new narrative. So I'm very hopeful that we have so many things in common with so many different projects going on at once and brought together in these efforts of collective intelligence. Why is it important to accelerate this sharing of information? Because this graphic that you see on your left has been around since the 80s. And we know that we need to eat from trees again. It's the most nutrition that we will get ever. It's perennial. That means that you don't need to work and break your back every time that it comes a new season. And it's the best chance to get food through the climate change events, the global warming events. Is the most resilient way to grow your food. Okay, continuing to the who, what, why, where, how, when. We are quoting Sam Harris because we also believe, even Sam Harris tried to be vegan, but that's another story. a viable global civilization that is pluralistic, cosmopolitan, tolerant of difference, and yet convergent on the same answers to the most important questions in life. So which are those? Which are the most important questions in life? And how are we answering them? How are we trying to understand which are the most important questions? Like, this is something that we have been also doing the last whole month in the Vegan World 2026 project. Okay, why? Because Sylvia and I believe in propagating and conserving edible food forests as the best practice available to ensure human and planetary flourishing. Another why, in the face of climate catastrophe, what we all need now are more trees and much better nutrition. Community food forests can provide both things. Why we're talking about trees? Because of this. Crop and livestock subsectors incurring the highest damages and losses in agriculture due to climate-related disasters. And yes, Jamin and Professor McPherson and Dr. Tao have been telling us, like, we need to focus on not getting the whole earth over the temperature that would burn us alive, right? Like, and I understand that, believe me, I understand the necessity to focus on that. But at the same time, we need to keep eating and having a space of collaboration. And trees won't only give us food, will give us a chance also to have the world that we feel inspired to live in, not just to survive or to decrease suffering. We need to change that approach of our story, like how to thrive, not how to survive. So yes, as you can see in this graphic, you will see that the most, the biggest chance we have to grow our food is to focus on trees, tree crops. When the best time to plant a tree is 70 years ago, the second best time is now. So that means that we should just hang up the call and find a community food forest project and join them somehow, and bring all our ideas of a mere project and a vegan world project, but all in a natural space that we can feel the connection to earth, not just like being afraid of what is happening. How? Together in cooperatives and social enterprises doing vegan, ecological, and fair permaculture. I don't know if most of you are familiar with the word permaculture, but we're going to address what that is and what are the possibilities of the crossover where food, forest, and community intersect. So here it is. Forest, community, and food, right? In the middle, we see vegan community food forests. So what is a forest? It's an area covered with trees and undergrowth, typically defined by diverse ecological functions that translate into environmental benefits. Food is the sustenance that humans and other living beings consume for energy that maintains and facilitates growth. And what is community? A group of individuals who live in the same place and or share similar interests that lead to social bonding. And we can see this graphic going on farther, but the idea is there, like the crossover and the intersect of these three things. We're not focusing only on trees, not only on food, not only on community, but the three together in the same space. Because food transcends the biology necessities of eating and being nurtured. Food is also artwork. The colors are vibrant of real whole foods. So as we can see in this graph, we have been only focusing on one dimension, which is food as commodity. But there's so many other aspects, like food is multi-dimensional, and so are we. We're focusing on the commons, not on private projects, not on monopolies, not in the story of I don't have money and I can't buy a big plot of land. That doesn't matter. If we show up in numbers, we can say we want to use the ocean to plant mirrors, and we can use what people in governments call wasteland, very conveniently, to transform them again into community food forest spaces. Forests that grow our food and also grow humans that don't need to be awakened. Mapping nutritional needs. This is a very important thing because, for example, talking about the diminishing suffering aspect of the mindset of most projects, this is also another one. The United Nations say that these should be our nutritional targets. And if you read through them, they're the most uninspiring bunch of objectives you can read in the same page. Like, they don't talk anything about thriving, anything about the possibilities open for the new narrative. What about nutrition for thriving? That's the question, like how to thrive. And we're presenting here a series of steps on how to make that happen and how to get involved as an awareness-based community action that transcends economy, that transcends ownership of the land, of the seeds, of the water. Like, it's basically the world that most people talk about in a concrete visualization. So how to prototype examples of community food forest in various climatic and cultural contexts is very important. And for that, we put together so many different projects that already exist. So we know that this is possible because all of these projects already exist. And here is just like a visual of what we're talking about. No? We want to live in such an environment, a green environment with clean water, clean air, healthy relationships, coexist with all animal, plants, fungi, everything under this earth. So this is just to think about the richness beyond accumulation of capital. What can we be rich in other than money? We can be rich in all of this, talking about the section of nutrition and flavors. And moving into sustainable food production, we can also be rich in all of this. None of these are the usual. These are crazy, standard, crazy dreams, right? But we can grasp the idea of what is real wealth. This is about biodiversity and nature. How can we be rich in those things? In emotions, also in governance. Okay, and new economy models. And this is very important because we believe that economy is still a big burden on our backs. Who is burning down the Amazon? Who is contaminating the water? Like, how are these projects financed? And the answer, even though it's very hard to realize, is not the company, is not the government, is not the president. It's being financed by us, everybody that puts money in the bank without asking the banks what to do with that money to get the best rates for you. You're financing all this destruction. So I feel that this conversation leaves a lot of room to talk about, but we are part of this system, even though it's hard to realize it. And we need to face a lot of barriers, specifically about money, to transcend to the next, what is next. Okay, vegan and permaculture are completely independent born concepts, but there is an edge effect that it's in the vegan permaculture approach that tells you that we can create something new from very different points of view of mindsets, such as maybe what was presented by Dr. Rao and Mr. Alan Savory. Instead of seeing what the difference are, we can focus on what we can grow in that edge. So in this case, vegan reasons and permaculture ethics are very, very similar, and we started exploring the most obvious ones. And then you can go to the less obvious ones, and you can find that everything is interrelated. And this is a very a clear way to present it, right? So what is in the intersect of all of these reasons and ethical values? Well, that's a good question. And maybe our approach is an Earth-Human-Animal care share, global fair share. And this is just like a graph that we created so people can explore those intersects. So, for example, vegans can tell everybody we have many things solved, but this phrase has been out there in public television since 1976. And if you ask me how many vegans are growing trees to feed themselves and to make the earth thrive again, I can count them with my fingers. So on the contrast, permaculture has a lot to offer on that. Like, they were born out of the intersect of ecology, agriculture, and landscape design. And we can see in David Holmgren's approach or co-creation of permaculture, that the possibilities on their silo are incredible, because they already have trained over 1 million people in the permaculture design course. So they can help out to make the vegan community food forest happen, and also the kelp forests in the underwater permaculture approach for the MIR project, right? Like, we have to join forces with everybody that is on the same direction, even if we are not on this, using the same t-shirt of the same team. And as we can see here, this is the permaculture approach that we are using. So in Earth Care, these are our points that we're using about permaculture. These are the people care points of our project, and these are the fair share points. So we're also using the flower of the permaculture flower categories to explain what is a community food forest. And of course, I'm not going to stop on each one of these slides. But again, if you are interested, we're more than willing to share this information so we can read it with more time if you feel that this is something that you would like to read in detail. And basically, we need to create a new culture, right? So we already have a glimpse of what centennial populations around the world have in common. So again, all around the world, we see from Loma Linda in California, USA, to Okinawa, Japan, to Sardinia, Italy, completely different races, completely different geographical locations. Maybe Loma Linda and Italy are kind of both Mediterranean, but I mean, like, they're in opposite sides of the world, such as Japan is an island, but all of them have their own unique characteristics. But there's again an edge effect that get them together, and we can see here that even if they're not vegan, they lead a plant-based diet, non-smoking, strong family connections. Like, we have an idea of what we want to create in the future. So the project vision is this big planetary community of food forests. Like, when we talk about planetary, is planetary, like everywhere. Every little niche of the world can be a community food forest. In the desert, in the high mountain, near the coasts, everywhere. The form of global community, okay. So where, again, this is kind of like a good example, no? Where is this land that we can use? This is a good graphic. Or this one in the UK, like so many different land use that are completely against life. To hunt, to play golf, to what they call low-grade agricultural land. Like, land is available. Out of our city cages, there's so much land even in the cities, there's so much land. So this is one of the most important potential perspectives that we want to present. Like, if we transcend this 2-year to 6-year time frame to survive, we're still going to be multiplying. And we can create cities that have this idea of convivial conservation, like promoting life instead of conserving life, and putting it behind fences, and like in a museum setting that people that have a lot of money can be counted to come in, while people look from the inside and don't have enough money to pay for it. Like, nature is human and human is nature. We can have a convivial design that involves economy, technology, and nature. Everything for the thriving culture. So yeah, this is the ideas that we have of these kind of cities. We call them biodiversities, where we try to put together the Veganville to vegan world into a middle point. And where to do it, biodiversity, we can retrofit current cities or start from scratch. And these are a bunch of ideas of how to finance, but that's an even longer thing that we are also willing to present you as a PDF if you want to read further on this. And now I would like to leave it like the open floor to question the hell out of this. Like, if you want to destroy it, go ahead. Like, don't believe anything that we say, even though we have been face to face with these possibilities, eating from them, planting them. If you don't believe in them, don't hesitate, and just like put all of your criticism and questions, and hopefully build on aspects that we can find edge effect with your mindsets. I guess that's it. Thank you so much for this longish presentation.
Beautiful, Jorge. Thank you. You can end viewing up there, or I can do it.
Yes.
Okay.
Done.
Very good. All right. Well, great to see some new faces, and welcome Shankar, and welcome.
Hey, Jorge. Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Beautiful. All right, welcome everyone. Well, you heard Jorge, and what an amazing presentation, Jorge and Sylvie. A beautiful, amazing vision. So let's. I see Miles has his hand raised. Is anyone else? Melissa and Miles and anyone else? We've also got James. Okay. All righty. Let's go. Miles, followed by Melissa, followed by James. Go ahead, Miles.
Wow, that was excellent. Thank you so much. And we have so many brilliant people here today. Jorge with his communication expertise, and Sylvie has a PhD in biochemical food production or
Bioengineering.
Bioengineering. Wow. So Sylvie, do you know the work of Don Huber? He's a professor in the, he's 85 years old, I believe. Yes, he's an elderly gentleman, and he's been studying food and fertilizers and now glyphosate. So Professor Donald Huber, Huber, there are a number of YouTube videos by him, and he really tears into the use of glyphosate and what it's doing to us. And he actually quotes a study done by the Alberta Children's Hospital where I live, and there's a correlation of the rise of glyphosate and the rise of, I think it's autism. It's a child typically a childhood issue. And he talks about a different a correlation factor. And apparently, if this type of correlation factor was a 0.6, you would say, well, it's undeniable that glyphosate, which is the herbicide that's being used, which is normally often called Roundup. And the reason why these companies like Bayer, which now owns Monsanto, are trying to corner the market on seeds is so that basically they corner the market on what we are eating. And anyway, to energize people to embrace your food forests, I think this going to the mothers and telling them what glyphosate is doing to their children would be a great way to get the food forest concept that you're talking about moving forward very quickly. Any thoughts on that?
Maybe just a quick interjection. The reason why I didn't continue on the journey of bioengineering is there are a lot of careers obviously afterwards, but the most obvious one was either going into pharmaceutical research or production, or more into biomedical production of insulin and stuff, and these things like the more biomedical approaches or the more biology approaches often involve animal testing. So like all these things, the animal testing and the pharmaceutical industry did not suit me. I didn't want to be part of the problem. I thought like, yeah, the pharmaceutical industry is in bed with the agriculture industry, and like even producing less harmful things like food flavor enhancers or colorings and stuff is still not natural, no? Or producing insulin for the people who need it, yes, it's good, but these things are already done. I think I'm not the person who needs to do this. So I stopped wanting to be in this career of like bioengineering, because I didn't see like a need. And I was headhunted by one of those. It wasn't Monsanto, it was Syngenta. And I went to an interview with them. And they're very good in like trying to persuade you and convince you to work for them. But yeah, no way. And so I thought like the better way forward was trying to find the natural solutions that are already out there. I mean, the engineering kind of mindset is still helpful. And what you said, like about like you the kind of research you do on these things is still helpful. Like the research on Monsanto and Roundup and glyphosate. I mean, this is super helpful. I think where we complement each other is I'm doing like we both do research, but Jorge is the communicator, so he has a very good approach and he can sense like the feelings also of people and finds an approach or a niche to get into each person's mind or a connection point where I often see more of what separates us maybe, where are we thinking different? But I think he has a good approach in that way. And absolutely, I agree that we have to like make people more aware that glyphosate is everywhere. Like my parents, for instance, in Germany, think, yeah, like German agriculture is not so bad, no? Like we're Germany, like it's so safe. But we're not any better. And just because we're not the US doesn't mean like we're doing things safely. And
I'd just like to correct what I said. It occurred to me that the correlation between the increased use of glyphosate and glyphosate pollution in our environment is correlated with celiac disease and gluten intolerance. I said autism, and so correct that. It's celiac disease. And I know that the number of people just around here that I know have young children with celiac issues is really shocking. And so this is serious business. We have to get clean food.
And even there, I feel like an industry is riding on that wave that nowadays there's so much hype about gluten intolerance, whereas most people are sensitive to it. like especially in connection or in association with the glyphosate. But they don't all have celiac disease, which is really, really life-threatening if you don't act accordingly. And so I think there's a whole industry, again, who rides on this making money now from gluten-free and overpricing things because it's sold as gluten-free. Whereas if you eat like things that are natural from like a food forest and don't rely at all on like this whole monoculture of wheat and all these grasses that we grow or grains that we grow just to feed the masses and mostly also the animal stock is ridiculous. So I think like just focusing on like what our ancestors used to do, like they lived maybe not all in the deep jungle, but they lived closer with nature, and then they were one with nature. They knew that nature provided for them. Nowadays, who knows that still, no? And who knows what plants are edible in the city, for instance, and there are many. So we need to get this connection. And plus also in the cities, of course, it would be better to have more trees that are more beneficial, that are also more native. A lot of cities just plant trees, like in Ecuador where we lived for a while, there were a lot of eucalyptus trees. They're not native, they're just sucking the soil dry because they consume so much water, and like they're fire prone. Like there's no benefit to them except for that they really smell nice.
Yeah, and if I can compliment something like I heard you also referring to, Miles, is the opportunity to tap into the angry mom movement is like nuclear energy is laughable, you know? Like I remember in 2008 when I was living in Northern California in the small town of Sebastopol, I went into a presentation of a documentary called Two Angry Moms in a Waldorf school setting. And oh boy, like, okay, like when like the divine femininity, it can be very like ladylike and very like airy. But if you get it angry, like take over. Yes.
All righty. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, Melissa is up next, followed by James. Go ahead, Melissa, sweetheart.
Hi, Jorge and Sylvia. It's so great to see you. I loved your presentation. Thank you so much. It really was so full and really comprehensive. And I just have a question for you, which is, how do we implement it? Like, say, here in the Northwest, how would we go about implementing that? I just, on a side, I have a lot of friends who are doing permaculture, and there are lots of organic farmers on the island here. Also, what I've noticed, and that just goes back to a comment Sylvie made, is a lot of people, certainly in the city, so say Seattle, they don't pick the fruit that's growing on the trees that are there, and that just, that upsets me so much when I see it. And for a while there, I was picking stuff and taking it to food banks or trying to put it up, but you know, it takes a long time to jar stuff and dehydrate things, and you're one person. So there's like this whole radical re-education of people starting from preschoolers all the way up to adults that has to happen, I think, to learn how to grow things and how to identify things and how to put up food, whether it's drying or preserving. So I just wanted to mention that. Yeah, so just back to my question, like, where do we start from with the food forests, which are also awesome because they feed animals, not just humans, and create habitats. So that's also a lovely aspect. Thanks.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. I think especially nowadays, people think you have to be like a permaculture specialist or have to have an education in food forest or agroforestry. I think everyone is needed and everyone has some knowledge. And like it would be good to connect to, of course, to government people to like convince the city officials to like see the benefits of growing more food trees and also of educating people. But so like it's also in our hands. I don't think that like you don't necessarily need all the governments to support you. It could be like educators that you need, like people that teach, people that have a lot of knowledge into homesteading or into like making things their own, preserving things. Like you can start small. You can have someone who's really knowledgeable in foraging and herb or mushroom identification, because these are everywhere. And like a lot of people are afraid of foraging in the cities because they're afraid of pollution. Yeah, of course, I wouldn't like pick on the most busy crossroad, but there's so many places where you can pick. And like by far more polluted are places that are near railways, like even forests and where railways cut through, because they often emit more pollution. So like, yeah, people, like you need everyone to help you like in like getting more fruit trees. And even if you start with people in the neighborhood that already have fruit trees and that can help you growing things or exchanging knowledge about diseases of fruit trees, etc., and what is native to the area. So, and art is a wonderful medium, I think, like to promote it and to educate people, like all kinds of art, like art for children, art for adults, art for the totally scientific, intellectual, no, that are not so like, oh, what is art? But like everyone responds in a different way. Like filmmaking is needed, and yeah, you could probably say more on this, like music and everything.
Yeah, like maybe linking it also to Miles, like he brought in the angry moms, you know. So I immediately, when I heard you, I could see like angry mob leaders in this massive amount of people just showing up peacefully in this civil disobedience kind of context, not to ask, but to demand airtime in mass media communication channels. Like we need to go massive and fast. So these outlets are amazing because we're kind of like connecting the, how to say it, like the core group, let's call it. But when the core group gets in stops the formation stage, we need to come with a rapid action plan. And this rapid action plan needs to reach everybody and to present it in a way that they can listen to people that they usually hear for any other topic that it's in their interest. So the only way that I can see it is to organize in these alternative media channels such as Zoom and YouTube and whatever, and then get it into the mass media communication channels. Like documentaries are great, and we have discussed that, no? But they are not mass media communication channels. Like their reach is very limited. So how to get this out there? We need to be in the 6 o'clock news, in the 8 o'clock news, in the 10 o'clock news. Like everybody needs to have a conversation around this. And make this fun. Make this like an event, like not to survive, but to thrive, please. Like this is when people are just like faced with such a grim outlook of diminishing suffering and the few privileged to survive will live without any trees, no, and no food, and having to eat soil or their own shit. Like this kind of scenario is like palliative, no? Like most people would go the other way and say, wow, if that's the future, I will ditch all crazy projects and just go into enjoy the flesh pleasures, you know. I believe that most people will say, like, I will enjoy life for as long as it goes. So if we present it as fun, as something that is doable, that you can get involved, that it's the new common. Everybody talks about it like people talked 20 years ago about Big Brother. You know, who fought with each other? Who is the girlfriend now? Blah blah. Like people talk about it in the office hall, in the way to the school, in the supermarkets, and the only way to do this is to make it fun. Like we have been programmed to think only about what is entertaining. Even if we just saw the documentary yesterday, like this is related. Sorry if I'm putting like an example, but we saw Super Size Me 2, Holy Chicken. It's not vegan, but this is where the edge effect happened, no? Like it is amazing. Like the guy Morgan Spurlock is giving the information to all the people. They're giving them, like he's giving through the concept of the fast food restaurant, all the truth. And some people kind of like awaken, no? But the vast majority of the masses, even though they know the truth, all they can think of is, this is yummy, you know? It's crazy. So can we make this yummy?
Beautiful, beautiful. All righty. James has a question or comment, followed by Jamin. Is there anyone else in the queue? Just let me know. And take it away, James.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jorge. That was very insightful and very interesting. And in regards to the the making fun of it, making it a fun thing and everything else. Well, yeah, that's a positive thing as well. But I can tell you one thing: I've been entertained since the moment I clicked in here tonight and last week every day. So it's entertaining to me because it is the only subject to be talking about. Like, and as regards to how do we make the spread and everything else, well, that's all going to be answered. Those questions will be answered by this conversation growing. As it grows, people will start sharing it with those that they know and encourage them to share it with those that they love and those that they love, and so on and so forth. That will all come together, and I believe wholeheartedly that will all come into fruition in very short time. I think it'll be much eventually it'll take off just as quick as the coronavirus, I think, myself, to be honest, if not faster. But just in relation to what you were saying there, yeah, I agree with everything that Jorge was on about, and in relation to the nuclear energy, yeah, nuclear energy is a futile endeavour now at the moment, because the facts state that we, as Guy McPherson states as well, one of our other major issues that we have to think about and deal with as well in the list of priorities is the decommissioning of the nuclear power stations that we have already, because of the global warming climate situation and the anomalous events that are going to start taking place. We're in the midst of them, as I said. We're in the third hurricane in 3 weeks early, and it is hurricanes, storms. They're not just storms anymore; they're hurricane storms now. But yeah, so we are. That's all going to come to place in its own way anyway. Like, so I believe that wholeheartedly. And in relation to what he was saying about the land usage for the forest, the food forests, yeah, that's vital. There's plenty of land available to, as he said, whether it's a common park area or green area, but that does come down to permission from the authorities and everything else in your locale and all that. And that only comes as well with as I said, with all this collective information getting out there and being shared. And once it's been shared and the people start seeing the sense of it, they'll advocate for it. So, so yeah, I agree with it. We have to find available space to plant food forests. It's just another facet of this whole lot that's going on at the moment that needs to take place. And I'd like to remind, like, Ireland, as I said in the conversation last week, Ireland was known as the land of forests. It was once always covered in forests in the time of the original, the original people of Ireland, the indigenous people of Ireland. And their religion before Christianity set foot in this country was the religion of the Druids, and the Druids worshipped the tree, and the people of Ireland worshipped the tree, and they worshipped the seasons, and they were seasonal livers. You know, they lived by the seasons, and yeah, they lived by the seasons, and they gathered the majority of their food from those trees, which were completely caught in the island anyway, and from the oceans, and from the other available grains and such and roots and what have you. So they lived naturally from what they had available on the little island that we are. And without any intervention from anywhere. So I must stress that Ireland for millennia has always been a self-supporting nation. So the political situation came into it in the sense that at the moment, no, like Ireland is making efforts. I'm not knocking Ireland or anything by any means, no, or anything like that. Like, and I don't want anyone to take me up wrong in what I'm saying. My urgency is getting the information out there, and for people in Ireland, if they have, you know, if they're intrigued by what I'm saying, I'm hoping that will be the case, and then they'll go further to look into what I'm saying. I don't want to go on now too long. I'll just say that the bogs are returning to do the jobs that they were supposed to do and have done for millennia, to you know, to draw down the CO2 out of our atmospheres, which was around before humanity, as some people may not be understanding of. There was CO2 in the atmosphere, and the bogs were an important part in drawing down that CO2 and storing it as well, and also, you know, sequestering it, and also they were a vital source in natural land drainages as well. So the bogs are returning for the right reasons, and that's a step in the right positive direction for Ireland. And land is, unfortunately, lands are mainly being used for forestry, yes, but it's for commercial use forestry, and it's not for the right reasons. It's just been sold off. A lot of it's been sold off, be burnt really, and whatever. But to generate energy again, as I say. But a lot of land is available, but a lot of farmers are under EU laws here and regulations, and they're actually not allowed to grow certain crops there, and they're not allowed to grow, well, I mean, they can grow, certain people grow natural organic crops and put on small scales and that and everything else, but they're not, like, genetically modified foods is the way it's been pushed here now by Europe, and that's a way that's been slowly pushing in on Ireland as well, and ever encroaching on it. And basically, we have plenty of land to grow natural food, but the system is designed for us not to, in order for us to continue to nurture our dependencies on them. So the Irish live seasonally, as I said, so we can go back that, we can return to that if we go back to what Michael was saying earlier about returning to our story, to our original story as Indigenous people, and our original stories which tell us, you know, where we came from, which is vitally important, and we're now continuing that story now, and the lessons that we learned from our original people are the lessons we need to return to. Yeah, that's it. I'll just basically say that you know, yeah, that's it. Sorry, I'll leave it at that. I know it babbles on, so I've just covered everything anyway. So carry on. Cheers, and thank you.
James, I really enjoy the way that you present these ideas. Like I also feel like you sometimes, that I can keep talking about one thought, but it's chained to so many others. And I like that you mentioned the aspect of humanity as we see it now. It's not in its climax. Like the culture that we see now, it's not like the drawing of the chimp and then the chimp-like looking, standing up kind of humanoid, and then like the hairy dude, like more straight. Like I believe that this is, we call evolution, but we forget that we have been with the same brain mass, brain size, the same skeleton features, everything the same for more than 200 years ago. like people say economy is like that, politics is like that. No, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. And they forget that we have been looking the same, maybe dressed differently or undressed, speaking differently for 300,000 years or something like that. 300,000 years. And we only think about the last 200, if any. Like, and I can tell you this, like most vegans don't think about veganism beyond what the documentary that they saw and that they turned them into vegan. Like for their perception, veganism started then. And they don't find out like the legacy of these people that started it. And this is 70 years ago. 70, like that's the age of my parents. And somehow we're so distracted that we can't even think 70. We forget what happens last week because we're presented with the media with the newest scandal. No? Now is the coronavirus. 10 years ago was the H1N1 thing of the swine flu, right? And now it's repeating again. And everybody is distracted over and over and over. So yeah, like I tap into that thought that you presented. And yes, like we need to understand that we are not witnessing humanity at its best. Like humanity has had so many other climaxes before, right? And the way that you mentioned about finding land, I've been there and part of me is still there. And then I say, where is no land? Land is everywhere. Like we have found land available everywhere. What is more of a challenge is to find the combination in the same time and space of the amount of community, maybe led by these 2 angry moms or even more of them, but this core group that can be from 5 to thousands, right? And reclaim the land back. Land is available everywhere, everywhere. It's not about a question of where is land available. It's everywhere. And like just think, like I'm thinking Ireland, right? Just think the golf courses. Just think about so many golf courses. In Japan, they're finally realizing, hey, maybe we should use these cleared out forests. Instead of pushing a little ball to a hole, let's put solar panels. And we can do the same, like solar panels with food coming from tree crops and underlying different sizes of other plants, right? Like it's everywhere. Like we are mismanaging it, but it's all around us. Like you're standing on land. You just found it under the sole of your feet. But the thing is that we are faced with a very big challenge that it's untackable by ourselves. That's where the community aspect joins the other two. It's not about forest, it's not about food, it's community. Like none of them can exist without each other. So this is like a land management disguised new system. It is not about food, it's not about land management, it's not only about community, it's everything. Everything in a vision all together. Some people call it holistic. Okay, let's call it that. I'm sorry that Sylvie couldn't, like she had to have a toilet break. But she listened to half of it and yeah, she would love to have answered.
Yeah. Just in relation to that, perhaps I may have not explained myself or something lost there in the communication. But when I was referring to the land and the use of land, I agree 100% in what you're saying. What my point I was making was that we as an Irish nation, we have the land available. That is what I'm saying. We do have land. Plenty of fields are going fallow all around us. We're very small. Dublin is our capital in Ireland. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ireland, but Dublin is our capital city. and it's the largest city in Ireland. But Cork City is known as the second capital of Ireland, really, or the really capital, as the Cork people would say. But we have a large enough city and it's expanding, but all cities, including all the small towns, we're all surrounded by empty fields. And that's what I'm talking about. That is the sin of the whole situation. We're surrounded by empty fields, and it's a sin because our society has been coerced now into a situation where decisions are no longer being made for us by ourselves. I'm hoping that that's starting to change here now in Ireland, and we'd start to make these decisions, the right decisions, to revert the lands back to what they should be naturally doing, which is providing us with what we desperately need. And I agree 100% with what you were saying.
James, this is not about contradicting what you said, but let's address like the concept of saying wasteland or empty land with what we started, like thinking about who else is in this world other than humans. Not because there's no humans, it means that it's empty or that it's wasteland. And just to tell you that I feel very passionate about what you just said, that yes, there is, but it's somewhere near my limit of mobility, of operation, you know, or where I am allowed. For example, in Mexico, people are terrified to be out in the forest camping because military, drug cartels, whatever can happen, right? Like we have not thought about the bear that might eat you, because there are no bears anymore, right? And that would be the usual thinking. I will get my rifle with me in the camp, so in case a bear wants to eat me, I can probably shoot some warning shots to the air. Like, no, we're not even there right now. So I'm just mentioning this because for me, the most crucial realization of my vegan journey is to understand that we are the cattle and we are in cages, and we think that the cities offer you the free range luxury of going to the ATM and get your papers that you can buy food with, and then go into a very romantic dinner and go to the movies. Like, this is not freedom. So we have been separated by design from nature. And I agree with you, nature is all around in these empty or wastelands, very conveniently labeled by the government like wastelands. No, you can't do anything there. So these are the real cages. These are the real cages. So yes, how to make them go convivial, like to understand that they don't need to be separated, but find that again, like it's, and it might require, like I have been building houses in the middle of the high deserts of New Mexico, where these new communities had this idea of, let's use a wasteland to create a greater world community, and build anything out of everything, using tires, cans, concrete if it's necessary to make it more durable, technology, like encountering the earth phenomena, working with nature, with all this permaculture, like in the middle of nowhere, right? Like, this is the idea that we have, like there's land somewhere and there's nature all around us. And Ireland, like you said, it is beautiful. It's a beautiful country. Mexico is a beautiful country. Name a country that is not beautiful. And if it's not beautiful now, it's because of bad management, over-exploitation, but it can come back and we can assist that. And yeah, I would have loved to go to Ireland. I don't think that I will do it in this lifetime, but very cool to see that we're connected in this call.
Beautiful. My goodness. What beautiful visions. So Jorge, you asked that we come to you with the toughest questions, the biggest challenges, right? So here's the thing. I totally love the vision that you're implementing, and I want to see it happen as quickly as possible for all the reasons you mentioned. So here's my tough question. So it's not a challenge at all about your vision, but it's a question of, you mentioned we need to be on the 6 o'clock news, the 8 o'clock news, the 10 o'clock news. Can you imagine what if all of us in this room right now, in this video conference room, had the world's attention for 5 minutes, right? What would we say? And I think you know where I'm going with this, is the planet is exponentially overheating, which is going to kill everything. And there is only one solution to that in the very short term, which is solar radiation management. So the hard question is, in the face of that reality, what do we tell the world in those 5 minutes? Now, maybe I'm thinking from the standpoint of scarcity, and I think that's probably the flaw in my question, right? Because we don't have to think in terms of scarcity. Yes, we can put out the fires and, right? So it's really more of a challenge for all of us, but I'll put it to you, Jorge, is what do we communicate? I mean, are we seeking to tell just this big story that starts with putting out the fires and then goes from there? What I don't want is for us to be like trying to compete in this scarcity model, SRM versus living food forests, etc. Anyway, I think you all hear where I'm coming from. So back to you. Thank you.
One answer I would provide is like, well, as you already said, we're not in a scarcity mode, or we shouldn't think like this. There's never only one solution. I think it's the complexity, the abundance of solutions that complement each other. And reforestation, as much as the solar radiation technology is really important, and I support that fully, it is complementary. One is on the ocean, the other one is on land. And I think also in a way, like, it doesn't attract or take away money from one or the other. I think like planting forests, yes, you need to somehow sustain yourself while the food forest is growing, and maybe money is still a medium to do this. But planting and having seeds available is not a question of money. It's a very low cost approach, whereas probably the solar radiation needs some seed money, some initial money to also bring the technology further forward and make it really available. But I think they complement each other so well. And like they approach different angles. One is approaching more the overheating. Yes, there was this aspect of the oyster farming. Not everyone is a big fan of oysters, I guess. So I don't know if that is the only solution to feeding the planet. But I mean, the food forest addresses so many issues. It addresses biodiversity, regrowing or rehabilitating the planet, having more habitats available, more ecosystems available that are thriving and flourishing with abundant biodiversity. Plus, it provides all the food, not only for us, but also for all the biodiversity around us. So I think in that sense, it also provides clean air, like fresh air. I think this is a perfect, like if we had 5 minutes, we should make a joint proposal of what we answer the news.
Yeah. Well, assuming that we have reclaimed the mass media channels, I would say that we would have more than 5 minutes. But if we need to say, we need to do this first, I would say that is, I don't know. I know that it might sound criticism, but it is very personal. Like I feel vibrant and healthy right now, and I'm 42. And when I was 29, I felt like I could die the next day. Why? Because I was living in this paradigm of success. where my work involved putting out fires constantly. And this is a term that is used in the advertising, marketing, communication, putting out fires. And this is related to the you already failed mode. Like you can succeed. When things are for yesterday, you already failed. You're already not going to make something come through. Like, and that was killing me. I didn't want to be in that reality. I was drinking a lot of alcohol, not sleeping at all, trying to forget about what was going on at work, partying all night long. So if you ask me, like, I don't know how to address this, because if I have a choice, I don't want to go back to that. Even though it is a necessity, I don't know if we can call that life, because I feel like in survival mode and already failed. And maybe I'm not, I don't have all the wisdom right now to say, this is what we should do. I feel like the one magic bullet approach of this is it, and we're sure. Sometimes, in my experience, like I have been reading about the Biosphere 2 by a fantastic article of this journalist saying how much we learned about that experience, and how all this mechanistic simplifying nature into trying to fix what is wrong didn't pay back, right? And that experience allows us to reevaluate. And of course, this is taking more than 5 minutes. But like, yeah, I feel that that experience gave us an appreciation of what nature is giving us. And just focusing on okay, maybe in some aspect of the Project Drawdown is just CO2, right? And in this aspect of solar radiation management is one aspect, which is the radiation coming from Earth, no? From the sun to the Earth. So it feels almost like one single issue thing. And I know that you have a lot of backup, and I really honor science, but we can all be wrong somehow. Like if we lose track of the possibility of being wrong, even me, not a scientist, like I can be wrong, and a scientist can be wrong, and science can be not maybe wrong in the abstract aspect of science, but how we read science, how we want to interpret science. I don't know that if my words are coming through correctly. This project involves a lot of dreaming, a lot of what we want to live in. I realize that, but I also been in these environments. So yeah, I don't want to live back into that. And maybe I will just like end up remembering Martin Luther King. Huh? And he said, even if they told me that the world will end tomorrow, I will still plant my apple tree. We need that.
In a way, I feel these two solutions, one is more nature-based, like we have kind of, I want to say a proof, because that sounds very scientific, but nature is very smart, and we already have the backup of nature that it has worked for years. So, I mean, approaching it simultaneously with a new technology solution that is also backed up by science, but but not by nature per se. No, I mean, we know that white surfaces reflect, etc., but it's not nature that built these things. And yeah, I think these two approaches, like the more nature side and the more technology side, nowadays they need to go hand in hand. In backing, like, yeah, science, what you also said, like you can read science one way or the other. And it's not only that, I mean, it's not only the interpretation side. Nowadays, media is fooling us around, or media is presenting us only the things we want to see. It's very hard to find proof for the contrary if you are convinced of one thing. Like you're looking in one direction. It's very, like, even as a scientist, it's like I can't understand climate change deniers. Maybe if I do enough research, and on the contrary, I probably got easily persuaded, or like also persuaded a little bit that this makes sense. It's the same with silvopasture and like regenerative grazing. Like they all make sense because there is some backup behind it, of course. But like if you see the full picture or not is the other question. And I think with the forests, it's like it's a round picture, and probably with solar radiation management it could be also, but it has not been proven for years.
Gotcha. Very good. Very good. Beautiful. All righty. Jim has his hand up. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Jorge. And what was Sveti or Sveti or I'm sorry, I can't.
But like the French way, Sylvie.
Sylvie. Okay, sorry. Thank you for an excellent presentation. Really enjoyed it. I just want to say that you mentioned and referred to Alan Savory and Silas Rao's debate or discussion earlier in the program, and I wasn't available to see that. And it sounds like you're trying to say they were talking at each other and not to each other. And I'm guessing on that. And I was just hoping that you could expound a little more on why you felt like they were talking at each other and not to each other, and what was their points of disagreement, if you could encapsulate that briefly.
Well, first of all, like it's good to appreciate that this happened, because it is like sitting, I don't know, like two people that you can think of that you could never imagine talking to each other, right? Never. Like, so just appreciating that it didn't go that bad, right? Like it was wonderful to see this opportunity, and in a level it created a bridge, no? Like to recognize each other, to say, okay, we will sit down. Maybe we won't like what we're hearing about each other, but that was wonderful. And I really appreciated Jamie. Like I am in awe that he made that happen, no? With the radish approach and the team and everything. Like that was amazing. Like literally unbelievable. Literally. Like this is like the closest to a miracle that I can think of without religious or whatever, no, involved. I think that maybe the topic, for example, like to talk about things clearly, like you can't compare a lifestyle to a land management approach. So it was like if I was talking to you in mathematics and you were responding to me in, people say that mathematics is about everything, but like in Sanskrit, you know, like, and I don't understand Sanskrit and you don't understand mathematics, and it's kind of like, no, but mathematics, no, but Sanskrit, and the common language, the common ground is missing because it doesn't exist. So it needs to be cultivated, and it's not easy at the beginning, right? Like you find very arid land and maybe not enough microorganisms to plant the first tree, right? So how are you going to feed that land and restore it? Maybe you need to pee on it, and maybe peeing is not very good, no? Like, oh, how can I like pee on a relationship in the middle? Yeah, like it sounds like marking territory. Like we don't know how to make this common ground happen in one sit and expect a success with a positive outcome, because we don't have that frame built yet. And maybe the arguments were that they both want the same thing, but they couldn't see it because it involves a very different ethical appreciation of life. And none of them is completely correct, and none of them is completely incorrect. And all of this humanity thing happens, no, in the middle. Like, I don't like what I'm hearing, but it's not about that. And there's a lot of miscommunication and misinterpretation. And like for me, coming from a communication, if you talk about killing and love and killing with love, it create you open the can of worms, no? Like, what do you mean you can kill with love? And both, in a sense, are correct, but in a sense, they are not correct by themselves. So this is where the edge effect needs to happen. Like when you find desert and woods coming together, that space, that edge, has more biodiversity than the desert and than the forest by themselves. But you need to be standing there, like to lose the grip of the shore, right? Of what is known to you and what you hold precious, and it's scary.
Yeah.
And it needs to be in the same way, so it doesn't create an imbalance. So, oh, you fell for it, and it was not really for sure. So there's a trust that has not been built yet. So yeah, I hope that it's not the last of this. Like maybe there's a chance to say that this was one out of I don't know how many series of sit downs. That's my hope, and I believe.
I just wonder if they were seeking separate solutions to a common problem, and maybe they were caught up in their own world of their mindset.
Exactly, we are all sometimes on that, right? We're like we can relate to that, and to feel the pressure of being live, and to feel the pressure of having this time frame of 2 to 6 years, and coming from their generation also, because I can say this very easy, no? Like I'm 42, but like they can be my uncle, parent, grandfather, no? And we come from a very big lesson to transcend the thing that the pressure that these generations had of being providers and being always right. Like when I was boss in this office life and people came to me and say, how can I solve this? And I said, I don't know. And they looked at me with so much like hate and uncertainty, because I'm a man in a boss position and I should know, or at least pretend that I knew and tell them what to do, right? And I'm a break from this generation, but this new model is not concrete yet. Like, how can you say, I don't know, like, how can we go through the 2-year, 6-year extinction to humanity? I don't know really. Like, I can tell everybody, do this, no? I know what is right for me, and I understand that this is not the only way to go.
I felt also both of them had a lot of answers to similar questions, but not to exactly the same questions. And none of them were totally wrong or right. Like all of them had some answers in their own way, and they just couldn't like talk about the same thing. Like one of them, and I think they would have complemented each other so well. Like Sailesh wasn't ready to perceive, or both of them were not ready to perceive the other's answer because they felt incompetent on the other person's specialty or on the other person's competence, no? And like Sailesh didn't have an answer to management approaches or growing food or like restoring land, whereas Alan didn't have an answer to the kindness or to the way how you do it kindly and with like how you not kill animals and how you could also use that land otherwise. Like both of them couldn't see the other person's perspective and also didn't want to admit that they hadn't looked into it, I think, or that they only wanted to present their solution as the one. So yeah, that made it very difficult for them to come to the same, to have a conversation about the same thing. And it was a conversation about veganism and land management, and like it could have been a really good co-creative approach to find a solution together, like how to use the management approach, and also like how to use veganism or compassionate approach to do land management. So it was good. It was not bad. It was just I felt it could have been much shorter for what was accomplished in the end.
Yeah, and it was a very difficult challenge to begin with. And in fact, in my original email to both of them, inviting them to this process, I said, let this not just be an exploration between, you know, your two respective areas of expertise, but let this be an example, perhaps even a model, for how people coming from contradictory points of view can come together and find common ground, or at least a framework to begin to discuss, etc. But if I had it to do over again, I would have organized the first meeting to be neither recorded nor broadcast, but look, let's just get together and, you know, and just talk, right, and get to know each other and whatnot. And maybe that's a good next step. So anyway, we'll see. All right, it is just a minute before the top of the hour, and we're about to begin our next hour. Will be all in Spanish, much the same topics, but all in Spanish. And Jorge and Sylvie, you both speak Spanish more than fluently, so you're certainly welcome, and you'll be right at home here. And Maida, do you think we should take maybe like a 5-minute break before we start, or what are you thinking?
Depende de ti. Ya tenemos a nuestra honorable gurú Lucy Cordero aquí conectada. Depende de ti si quieres agarrar un break de 5 minutos, como tú quieras, como te sientas, porque yo sé que pues vas a estar aquí que un montón de horas todavía, 24 horas es la meta.
Sí, correcto. Bueno, pues tomamos unos 5 minutitos, pueden hablar si quieren y dar la bienvenida. Y mientras tanto, nomás voy al baño rapidito, vengo.
Perfecto, vete corriendo.
Okay, I'm going to pause right now.
I feel very grateful for all of you. I learned a lot, and we're going to take the dogs for a quick last stroll quickly and come back for the hora en español para hablar con todos en español.
Perfecto. Jorge, Silvia, muchísimas gracias por su excelente presentación y conversación. Muchísimas gracias. Muy bien.
Gracias.
Gracias, Jorge.
Gracias.